Hello, everybody.
All right.
All right. We are all right. Welcome to the Tech Audio Chat. My name is Dan Reynolds. Planning on tech audioing tonight. I'm joined by David Weaver.
Yes, that's me. I'm definitely planning on tech audioing tonight. My parents told me not to when I was a young child. They said, don't you ever tech audio?" And then they pulled out a hard drive of samples from under my bed, and I was like, it's not what it looks like."
I'm just
And then they were
holding
like,
it for
"I
a
don't know what
friend.
this is. There can't be many samples on this floppy drive." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fair. That's sort of honest."
Yeah. This dangerous occupation. Those aspiring, you're a little crazy, but that's okay. It's what it takes to get here.
It is a funny field when you think about the experience that you get as a tech audio person, or just audio person in games in general, I suppose, tends to be really variable depending on like what games you're working on. Like I
Mm.
remember my first really big, like full time gig in games was at a car racing company, and even though Dad built a car while I sanded a thing once, and then he continued to build the car for several years afterwards without my help. Even though I considered myself a car person around cars, it wasn't really until I tried to make the sound of cars sound like cars that I needed to
Mm-hmm.
learn about cars. And then you get other people that could tell you everything about guns or
Right.
dragons or made up languages or Animal Crossing,
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely there's something to the act of appreciation for something, right? Like learning about something because you want to create some kind of presentation or piece of art that presents that thing in some
Mhm.
way, right? It's one of the things actually I really love. I think we've talked about it before, but I really enjoy uh field recording
Oh yeah.
because there's something about everything's on. Now I have to be quiet and just listen. And there's like that beautiful focus on the things that around you that you're trying to capture, you're trying to record. And accepting in like a really weird sort of zen way that you don't have any control at this stage. Like you started
Mm.
the all you could do is stop it. you know and so you just sort of have to let this experience happen and focus on the things that are going on. And yeah, like I have definitely the most time definitely learned about a car is when I've had to create the engine, implement an engine sound.
I remember it was really funny. One of my old students helped me with a car recording day, and when we were driving up, because I called him because he's super reliable student of mine, and I mean I've worked with him tons of times since. I'm gonna play board games with him this Sunday, so it is one of those things where he used to help out on recording sessions. Named Tom, if he's in the chat, might be in the chat, but when I called him and said, "I've got a car recording, I need to pick you up, I need a person to help me. It's going to be like 2 days, 40 degrees. I'll pick you up about 5 in the morning." And he went up to me and said, "No, no, I'll get dropped off at your place at 4." And I said, "Okay." And so he got dropped off, and then we got in the car, and he said, so we had a couple of hours drive to the racetrack to record, and he said, "I don't really know anything about cars. So can you help me? Like, what do we need to do?" I said, "Look, I just need a pair of hands. I need someone's going to be able to
Right.
attach cables and whatever." And it wasn't until the 3 hour long drive that I realized how much I'd learned about cars from
Mm.
from working at the car game, because I could tell him why all the sounds were important and where they come from and all these different bits, and it really was a very delayed appreciation. I feel like sometimes in games you're so overawed by the task at hand that you can forget to appreciate how much you've grown along the way
Right.
and learning all these bits and pieces. And it wasn't until I was telling him like, well, there's two types of turbo valves. There's a dump valve and then there's some people like naturally aspirated cars, and that's because they sound like this. And there's a big thing on the top. That's a supercharger, and it doesn't. And it's just really, yeah, it's really funny. And then the field recording thing was when I remember teaching film sound when you do your Foley class for the first time, and you can't stop making sound accidentally. You
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
realize how much sound you're making, and it reminds me that field recording story of, yeah, like, oh, I make so much goddamn noise, like,
Yeah.
I just can't stop wrecking the take by going making some noise, or a watch or a wrist thing or a jewelry or something that ticks along, and you're like, ah, I keep wrecking it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember actually that often happening when I was teaching. You'd because you'd have a group of new folks who don't have that self awareness. It takes you kind of have to work to create that, right? Like, and especially in the cases where we might be recording something with tails, and it's like you gotta let the tail finish. you know, it's super easy. It's like, oh, that feels like enough, or like however you feel, and then you're like, let's do it again. Or like, it's like, oh no,
Like, no, there's four
now we have
seconds
to.
on that part. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. This conversation reminds me of. So when I first um, got the got word that I would be contracted to reproduce the music for Monkey Island Special Edition, this Monkey Island 2 Special Edition. I Jesse Harlan reached out and he was like, "Yeah, I want you on this gig," and I was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" I was like, "Are you sure?" Because
Nothing
I'd
instills
been very
confidence like a person asking, like,
I've been very
"You-"
focused on orchestra music production and stuff like that, and for those who don't know or aren't aware, it's like New Orleans jazz with some like Caribbean elements
not an
mixed
easy
in.
genre either to like
It's
drop
not.
into, you know?
It's not. And there were four of us working on because there were four islands. They sort of split it up. And Will Roger got the like he was basically our lead because it was him and me as a contractor and a couple other contractors, Jeff Ball and Andrew Versa. And I remember uh, I got uh, the island Booty Island.
Nice.
They all had funny names. And mine was mostly, I think, Peter McConnell's work. And the original had been composed on Roland MT32s. And Peter McConnell is a great musician, multi instrumentalist. And I remember just wanting to like sort of go a little extra on the drums because a lot of the drums were very minimalist in the
Okay.
original composition, in the original works. And I remember the first track that I worked on, I was so nervous that I used some like loops to try to just be like to get that performance sound. And Jesse Harlan was like, "What's going on? what? I don't understand what's happening here." Like some sort of weird cross stick thing. And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know, man. I don't know what." And so then I just had to like go onto YouTube and I just started watching New Orleans jazz drumming. Like I just any
Mm.
live performance video that I could find where the drummer was somehow in focus. And then I just started watching like, you know, performances on performances on performances of just what are they doing with their hands? What are they doing with their feet? When do they look like they're sweating? When do they look like they're having fun? And that forced me to sort of appreciate the idiomatic sort of synchronicities of drumming, right? Of like that sort of kit, that kind of kit drumming. And then I just everything I didn't just I wrote all of the notes. Like I wrote all the performances with that in mind, trying to recreate that sort of idiomatic performance. And I feel like that helped me a whole lot. It just the act of first taking the sort of like, yes, I don't really know what I'm doing, and being able to go, okay, let me observe, let me listen, let me learn, and go from there. And I think that's really. I feel like that's what we're talking about. So I wanted to bring that story up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really interesting thing that you've got to kind of get over that hump too. Like, so I initially studied to be a film composer, right? And for film composition nowadays, you write a lot of different types of music that fits into tons of different types of films. Not all film composers are like this. Some film composers have a certain style that they really like, but
Yeah,
when you don't have a job as or a great style that people love, you need to be a chameleon somewhat. And
yeah,
something I've toed and froed with over time, and this definitely with something like New Orleans jazz, um, it is a really high bar of you've got to pass the pastiche level to
yeah.
where it feels real again, because with timelines, if you have a couple of days to do New Orleans jazz, it's really not gonna sound good, because you're gonna get basically just sing, sing, sing,
Yeah,
and that's it. You'll get some sort of weird second line rip off thing, and that's what you get for that time. And it always feels really tricky when you're asked to compose in a style that isn't of your culture, time, demographic, whatever it
yeah,
might be. That there does feel there feels a disservice of not spending enough time on the things that you mentioned,
yeah,
like the idioms of the medium, and making sure that you do actually do it justice. And maybe you don't do it as well as the New Orleans jazz people would actually do it, but
yeah,
we've got to do the work, and that's what it might be. And it definitely feels like diving deep enough into it to get something out of it, to at least try and do it justice that way, can feel really tricky. I know I definitely struggle with it when you're asked to write for instruments you don't play,
yeah,
or you don't understand. You can kind of say, well, it's a bit like this, and
yeah,
that's not necessarily right, which is why working with performers is always just so beneficial.
yeah. Failing that, Cecil Forsythe's orchestration book is the funniest orchestration book ever written.
That's a hell of a blurb. That's a way to do a selling point. Is the funniest. What makes it so funny?
His opinion on instruments. He's he's not
He's just like,
reserved.
trombone sucks.
But
What else?
oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. You want to talk about his opinion on trombones? Like that is a chapter worth reading. Yes,
oh,
that's
this
Cecil
sounds
Forsythe.
great.
He's got that. He's got that real cutting, like sort of British wit,
Sure.
to it. I can hear his voice. I don't know what it sounds like, but I can hear it when I.
Yeah, no, I get that. That kind of there's that semblance of writing where this is such a considered opinion of you, and only that you are saying this do I understand that it's okay that you say it this way. But if I saw a person saying this on the street this way, I'd be like, wow, what is wrong with that person? I think the only big band book I have, there is a really is this jazz orchestration one. So this one that's definitely
I'm
not a
raising my
library
head
book
like I
that
can
I
see
haven't
around the
returned.
camera.
There we go. Is
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
it's by William Russo. It is outstanding, I think, for Big Ant. Shout out to Big Ant Sports Games.
Yeah,
Um, big band writing in terms of that, like jazz orchestra, I suppose, like the Benny Goodman sort of style thing.
nice.
But
Yeah,
it is really challenging in that it's kind of like, if I had to picture, when you learn counterpoint, like from a very theoretical sense. It's jazz orchestration from a very theoretical sense of like you voice it this way for this effect. Here's the
Yeah.
technique. There you go. Which I find very freeing in terms of just. Uh, I think the best way to approach it is like I have a piece or I have some changes and I need to orchestrate them. What are some techniques or attempts or ways I could do that? And then you can kind of just pick up and open a page and go like, oh, like what's this? How will you do dominant seventh chords? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's if you followed it all to the letter, you'd probably end up with something a little bit hollow and maybe too formulaic. But following parts of it and allowing the music to kind of make the mistakes in the right places ends up being a way to get a really balanced sound from that traditional, yeah, like Adler, like Johan said,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Adler approach of
Samuel Adler.
yeah, orchestration, which is like the seminal textbook that you need, you know, to
Well,
work in the field.
you know what I love about Adler is the like it's very modern and it's very enriched with lots of media examples. So, you know, if you're teaching or like in a classroom setting, it has a lot of usefulness. I've
Mm,
definitely even though I have like when taught I taught like a music appreciation slash theory sort of unit. It was
yep.
very fast, very survey. But while I didn't go deep on like particular orchestration aspects, I did use those videos a lot in the classroom as like, hey, here's a flute and here's a
Mm,
piccolo, you know, and it's like the but yeah, the that's why I think it's not enough to read it. Like I have all sorts of older texts, you know. Um I think the one that I had, I don't know what happened to it. I don't know I don't seem to have it anymore. I had the Berlioz one that had
oh
like
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
that's
like
great.
half of it was just the music examples, but I
Yep.
have to go track down like the recording and try to find, you know, it gets a little bit finicky there. It's really nice when there's like here's just the excerpt in example and isolated so you can kind of hear that technique or whatever they're trying to demonstrate.
Yeah, I
The
remember
one that I
when.
really like that is sort of jazzy and I've talked about before is Henry Mancini's
Mm,
sounds and scores.
sounds of the score, I think
Sounds and scores. Oh my gosh, we should put. I'll put links for all
we
of
should
these.
get a
What was your hit, William
Amazon
Russo?
referral. William Russo, jazz composition and orchestration. This one looks like this. This is probably a 10-year-old version now, or maybe it's probably even older. So there might be another version. Oh, it came out in 1968. So you know, it's like
When it mattered.
and 15 years old. You know,
It's when they were
um,
doing it.
that's when they were doing it. You know, tell me that we haven't gotten more jazz. Well, actually, no, I don't know. One of the other really contemporary, just to go really contemporary for a second. Corey Wong sells the charts of the Hornhead's tunes, or the Hornhead parts of his tunes on his website or something. Who's a guitar like funk guitarist from Wolfpack and has he's his own person. He's not just a funk guitarist from Wolfpack, but he has the Hornheads, who was Prince's horn section, basically, and they sell the charts for, you know, it's a 4 to 8 piece horn section, which I think has some really cool modern approaches to writing it with like a band. And I'd love to hear more of that kind of thing. I guess you kind of hear some of it in like Mario Kart, that kind of like very high octane,
Yeah,
tight ensemble playing that you probably find more so than traditional, you know, jazz comp orchestration things.
I'm putting all this stuff. I'm putting all this stuff. If you can find a link, link that to me, and I'll put it in the chat or in the description, video description.
Yeah, I should do
But
that.
I'm putting the. I just put the. I'm putting the
Oh,
orchestration
Fat
stuff
Lip.
that we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really good orchestration books. I'll do one more recommendation. Do we want one more recommendation?
Yeah, I'll like drop it like it's hot. Sounds.
Oh yeah, Behind Bars is good too. So behind bars, this isn't behind bars, but behind bars is like the dictionary of music notation. That one's good. But Techniques of the Contemporary Composer by David Cope. And David Cope is I think he works, I think he's from the States. He, I think this is a really good companion textbook in the same way that you mentioned the Adler was, where it's sort of here's a technique, try it, here's some examples of how it works. And it is sort of more, well, it says contemporary
Sorry, what was it
composer.
again?
So it's Techniques of the Contemporary Composer by David Cope, this one here. And it is again, it is very like orchestral in the actual delivery of it. And there's some notation stuff, but it's things like using pitch class sets or using odd arrangements of instruments, so arranging them around people, prepared piano stuff, notating
Nice.
stochastic things. I feel like sometimes with orchestration textbooks, you can get really like mired in there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And this one was a little bit more freeing in terms of here's a new technique to try if you're into like the Messiaen thing, or if you just I want a classic orchestral bit, but it's Alan Wake, so I need like a glissando riser thing, and I want some horrible sound at the end. What do I do? And there's some not that
Yeah,
it's a
that's
book
cool.
about making horrible sounds, but
No,
it's
no, no. But that's yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's like it's hard to find maybe what you'd call postmodernist sort of
yeah, definitely.
theory and technique. Like Schoenberg's only gonna take you so far.
Well, I mean the tricky thing, and I believe it does Adler go into, I think it does. I think you get up to pitch class sets, and that's an approach. And again, it doesn't really matter whether you're a hardcore music notation person. We're in game audio. People come to game audio from all walks of life and all levels of music experience. But I think these books inform your discussions with performers. They're really not about a rule set of how to do a specific thing, but they're really just an idea. And I mean, I remember the what is it? Yeah, there's even some digital stuff about how to edit parts of transients and things out of notes. So they're really trying to do some pretty wacky things. I think it's a really interesting appendage to have when you're looking at music composition, because ideally you just sort of take one of these ideas and go forward with it. I don't remember if I remember Spitfire Audio used to be a thing in terms of, like, it's still a thing, but I remember they were really big in the composition space, and it's sort of again this maybe middle ground I like to recommend when I think about music literacy, because it's a very like applied music theory in the Hans Zimmer sense of the emotion you're trying to create, instead of a um, yeah, it's just it's a multimedia company that do contact sample libraries and things like that. But I remember they used to have a lot of resources about sampling and doing things. Nick Emerson, that's a good point. It's about atonality that matches the picture. Get genre is irrelevant, because you can really do some crazy stuff with atonality or just interesting sounds in an interesting setting. It doesn't really need to be anything other than that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, I I think that genre, like key we've talked about before, is a construct. It's not a
Mm.
real thing, and it can be a guide. Just like so I have we talked about schooling. My schooling is in English. I have an English degree, and genre is sort of an artifact of the modernist age. Um, Whereas like postmodernism is the conceit that it's a construct. And so yeah, I think I would probably look, a lot of modern film scores sort of concede that. Not all of them. I mean, there is a sort of traditional scoring legacy that's sort of mired in romanticism, and that is part of the sort of modernist presentation, I guess, aesthetic. But then you have like literally Paderewki like used in horror movies and stuff like that, and yeah. But then that is even though interestingly a sort of harnessing of this postmodern expression into like a modernist theme, which is sort of interesting as well, I guess.
Well, Penderecki as well. I mean, considering we're talking about the Threnody for victims of Hiroshima, Threnody is that the title of the piece? I think there's also the emotional weight of the context that it's portraying that probably lies in that it's a very straightforward use of that type of expression because it's like shrieking violin sound. I wonder what this is portraying.
Well, there's I guess you could almost think of music licensing for film as a kind of media sampling, right? When I used to teach beat production, that was one of the things that I tried to emphasize for my students was that like you should consider your sources. You're going to sample a piece of music. What is that music bringing? Like, what does it mean? What is it about? What is its history? Because I think that enriches the because it's like sampling is like the Andy Warhol thing, right? It's like, but there is a sort of a very easy superficial idea behind that, and then there is a sort of like, let's investigate this, let's enrich this thing that I'm making with the meaning of this other thing. That's what we do in in creative writing, in poetry. We think about words and the word history and what the word used to mean and how that fits in the context of what we're creating, and then we can generate layers of depth to our presentation.
It's also like a way to borrow a very codified emotion or feeling. If you like think about the Vietnam shot where the Rolling Stones is playing, it's like you're just able to get this huge weight of setting, emotion, place, period, whatever it might be, without needing to develop that over time, which is probably going to be something that will become likely more and more challenging over time.
I think it's already there.
Yeah, because now it's what would you say the sound of the 2010s is? That's not to say it doesn't have a lot of amazing artwork and a lot of fantastic things. It's the broadness of music and film and sound at the moment starts to get more and more challenging to say, oh, this is of a time period. Whereas you have even early 2000s has a feeling, but it hasn't shifted as much as it did from say the 90s or maybe even the 70s or something.
Yeah. And you have a kind of cultural memification that happens as well. I find myself sometimes watching these reaction videos. Like sometimes it's fascinating. Like someone 20 years younger than I am watching a movie that I'm very familiar with that they have never watched, and I'm like, wait, people haven't watched this,
Yeah.
But then their reaction, and then sometimes they're like, oh, that's where that comes from, like I know that because it's sort of echoed through culture in different forms and different callbacks and different sort of meme videos and stuff like that.
It definitely starts to get really strange when it draws to light some of the context of the older work when you need to say like, oh, well, that's kind of how it was at the time, and it's not it's not we don't agree with it, or we don't like when you bring in that part of it is it gets really weird. I feel. I mean, I wonder for music, when you say the memification of it, I don't know what the the percentage of current music used as memes versus older music used as memes. I don't know what that delineation is, but it'd be interesting to see if it is. Do we happen to use older stuff? I feel like maybe we used older stuff earlier, but now that businesses are so, in charge of the marketing, now we use the new stuff as a way to push the new whatever.
Yeah, well, yeah. So there's the like dominant generation, financially dominant generation that tends to be catered to, which is usually older, and so there's this like constant corporate callback to 20 years ago.
Yeah,
But I I think there's also just, I don't know, that this propagation of the things that we create because of the medium that we work in now, like digital medium, internet, social media, all these things sort of are about cultivating content and propagating content. And so where it used to be like, oh, you saw it because you saw it in the movie theaters, and then maybe later on you were able to view it at home or listen to it at home. And then the medium changed, and maybe they re-released a thing, and you did but like there has been a sort of, I don't know, like an acceleration of it or an explosion of it, like exponential growth of just propagating and regenerating and repackaging content.
I do wonder. I mean, one of the I think for me the first time, but it's probably something that I'm just not that aware of when I was playing Expedition 33, and there is the meme of the dog being in a house that's on fire that says "This is fine," and it was one of the characters in that happening, and it was the first instance I could think of. Or I remembered thinking of where there was a meme in a game as a
Oh
sort of
yeah,
fallback dramatic effect point, not a dramatic effect, but just an intellectual referencing of internet culture. And I wonder when we'll find that for. It probably exists in music. I'm trying to think of in games in music. I'm trying to think of exactly where it would be, or what it would be. But I guess I could think of something playing on the radio in the background of a certain scene or something. Like one of the interesting things playing that game is I know that the Final Fantasy series was referenced as a very reason for making that kind of game is they wanted to do a version of Final Fantasy that was a thing. And I remember there were parts of it, hearing it, where it really felt like they were playing the music of Final Fantasy X, and they weren't. It's not Final Fantasy X, as far as I'm aware. It's very different music, but there was orchestration choices, melodic choices that felt very akin to the Nobuo Uematsu style of composition, which feels like it's inevitable. You're influenced by the people that you listen to and
right.
whatnot, but it was a really strange thing where I found myself actively saying aloud, like, "Oh, that's kind of referencing this," and I'm like, "Is it referencing that, or is it actually just inspired by?" And how I don't
Right.
know how to
Yeah.
separate that necessarily.
I think that's a when I was teaching, I would play like ELP for, you know uh like next to Uematsu, it's like Final Fantasy 7 battle music, and then it's like Tarkinen, and it's just like, you hear it, like
Mm,
Uematsu want to do prog rock.
big time.
And I think that inspiration is part of what pushes us forward as artists. I think that's and that inspiration. I think that inspiration and how it manifests evolves based on the rules of the creation process, right?
Mm.
Like, for example, before modern copyright rules, it was very common for composers to just quote each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it wasn't like it was you would get in trouble so much as it may have been rude.
yeah.
You
That was it. It was literally like we play the Dies Irae because I know it pisses people off that we play the Dies Irae, and that's the only reason we do it. And that's kind of
Yeah.
that's cool. It feels like uh, Yeah, I guess you. Oh, wow, that's a really good point, Dan. I never really thought about that. But if you did try and quote someone now, you would get sued.
Yeah,
So,
it's sort of like a legal issue. And you gotta
yeah,
get permission, or you have to prove that it's a parody, or all this sort of stuff gets really complicated.
which really makes
Or
it
just
hard to
kind
just sort of drop a little thing
yeah,
in if it's like, oh, we've got to get our legal department to talk to Disney about doing Go the Distance from
right.
Hercules.
That's right. And I think the what's lost in that is the conversation that art is. In other words, like art is this sort of expression, and we as artists respond to other art, and this becomes a discourse that happens over time, and feeds culture and feeds society. And when it's sort of locked down the way that it is, like it's like the birthday song, right? Like at some point, like this is a cultural thing, but we can't sing it because it's been locked down by like one family for 100 years, and so we sort of lose that function, and everything else is geared around the packaging of it. So it's like,
Mm.
yeah, you can't do that, but if you license it, then you can, right?
Yeah, which would be, permissible if the licensing were permissible, and it just isn't for what you're trying to use it for. I guess like we have a similar case in Australia of the Man Down Under song,
Mhm.
where it quotes, or it was written beforehand, and then in a jam session, the flute player quoted "Kookaburra Sits in the Old Gum Tree," which was a free to use nursery
Right.
rhyme at the time, and then later someone bought it and then retroactively sued the
Yeah.
company to say that they needed to, or the band to say that they needed to pay them huge damages. And it's interesting because when I was talking about this story, we started thinking like, well, but the reason that was cool was because it reminded us that it was Australian, and that was really nice. It wasn't really about, like, it's a nursery rhyme. I
Yeah.
do feel like maybe there should be some category of colloquial music usage that could be a thing. Obviously, we're not lawyers, not the people that, I understand it's intellectual
Well, the
property
people.
stuff, but
Well, I don't know what Australian proceedings work. In the U.S., the people who are making the decision aren't necessarily music people.
no,
And we like I think, for us, one of the sort of big cases in the last, I don't know, maybe it's 10 years now. I'm getting old. Is the blurred line case, which is,
right? Yep.
and as much as you may have feelings about the song itself,
That's Marvin Gaye, right?
the Marvin Gaye estate
Yep.
successfully sued them. And
For the
the
for the for the
clincher was
yeah, for the clave or something, right?
no, the clincher, the clincher was, as I understand it, the clincher was that um, Pharrell Williams had given a interview where was quoted as saying that he was going for that Marvin Gaye feel, or he quoted a specific track, and it's just motivation to copy is the one of the biggest offenders in that sort of evaluation. Whereas like the Ed Sheeran defense, that's what it should be called, is the Ed Sheeran defense.
Ed Sheeran defense.
Where you just go in, and I think that's, this is the lesson to modern artists. Like there is a lot of value in in having some level of music literacy to defend yourself in that case, because um you know eh, eh, the if you watch some of the depositions on the blurred lines case, it's kind of embarrassing for the artists because they're asked to read music that they have trouble reading. And it's not like they shouldn't, like it's just mean. Like it's just mean to
Yeah,
do that. But like Ed Sheeran goes in and he's like with his guitar and he's just
he
like,
just
here
plays
you
like
go.
100 songs of the
Yeah.
same changes. Yeah, it's so clever.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's what's frustrating is that musicians know that it's okay. Like even in the Blur Lines case, I think there's a quote from Stevie Wonder that's like, "This is bullshit" or something like that. And it's like, yeah, because we all know, like musicians know that is not the same thing. What we're hearing isn't the same music. And it's this sort of weird greed that comes about with trying to like control the things people could do in a weird way, because copyright's supposed to protect innovation. Like that's sort of like the idea behind it. Anyway, we kind of went off on a.
Hey,
It was
we're
fun.
talking music.
Yeah,
It's
we're
fine.
talking music. Something
We're talking music.
something music. Yeah.
Something music. You know, it's it's a normal thing. I think I think it's cool looking at how to decide directions you want to go. We have this thing of nowadays we make games sort of faster and slower than ever before, I suppose, because in some respects, like we're releasing games all the time, like, you know, new DLC or new updates or things like that, which have the potential or the ability um, or the cognizance of what's happening to try and jump on that train and release, you know, oh, K-pop Demon Hunters comes out, K-pop Demon Hunter skin. All right,
Yeah.
new thing, you know, and there's that. But then there's also that secondary level of games which is made in response to big popular game. You know, Vampire Survivors comes out 2 years later, tons of Vampire Survivors clones, because that's just, you see big thing and then respond to it over time. And there is still, when you're influenced so heavily by a type of game, it's really the diehard fans that will be able to tell you how it's really different from that diehard game, or how it works, in the same way that musicians will tell you why the melody is different, or why this isn't the same music, even though all the notes are the same and the tempo is the same. It's actually not the same music, and because of these different feels,
Yeah.
and that's definitely a thing, a parallel I see in games. When if you ask a person that played shooters and then you said like, oh, do you play like Fortnite or Tarkov or Apex, or, and you know, a a, a non gamer literate person might be like, oh yeah, shooters, you know, shoot the gun, but then they're thinking everything from Call of Duty to Doom to whatever, and they're all very very different. As opposed to just being shooters, like that we've really blown that shooter genre open to extraction shooters and
Yeah.
whatever the other genres are of shooters. So
Yeah. 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 Comment in the chat your favorite
yeah,
subgenre of shooters.
tell us what the most distinct. I mean, there's rhythm shooters. I know that there was a rhythm shooter, a Hellsinger, I think it was called. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Um,
There's a few of them out there. Why? That's a great segue.
I was trying. I was trying to get us there. I was trying to
Oh
get us
my
there. We get there.
goodness. Well, yeah. Uh, so I shared already like a video of what I was hoping to talk about. It's a really fast, like hastily put together demo. Um, do you have something? You
Mine
wanted?
Mine is broken, but
Okay.
we can talk about how we might use it, and
All right.
that's about as not broken anyway. So it's I'm down to talk about it. It probably won't take ages, and it probably leads back into the what if we did something with composition. So I'm fine for anything.
Okay. Let me switch to that. Change my audio settings, and then
Just before you jump into it, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what it is, or what you were trying to do, or what idea you were interested in looking into?
yeah. So I just want to make sure that you don't hear yourself, right? You don't, if you talk, you don't hear
Oh, I always hear myself.
echo back.
Echo back.
Okay, cool. Um, what was I trying to do? So yeah, I felt like, oh, music, that's a topic we could talk about. And then I started having ideas on something that I might want to talk about.
Okay.
But then I was like, oh, this is actually too big to do in one night. So So that yes, because I just basically my schedule's kind of been busy. It's kind of ramping up as we get closer to the Game Sound Con, and so yeah, I had basically I think Tuesday to work on this Tuesday evening.
It's crazy that you did this in one day. Like people are going to be. It's still very impressive. It's still a
I
lot of
think
cool
when we
stuff.
look at it, you'll see why it was just one day or one evening of work. But because it's pretty hacky to put together. But
You definitely are a composer and creative writer at heart. Just like, here's this really cool thing I made, but it sucks. It's
you know,
like, oh,
you know what's funny is that there was a thread on Blue Sky recently that I participated in, which was about how fast I wrote essays in college. And I boasted that uh, I I wrote a 4-page essay on the first sentence of the first paragraph of Jane Eyre, and I got an A plus, or actually I got an A minus. But I was very
someone
proud
like
of that. It was very fast. It was an overnight kind of deal. Like I didn't read the book, obviously. I read the first chapter.
That's okay.
So
All right. I
I
thought
wrote
it
four
was. I
pages,
thought the
a
point was that
4-page
you wrote the
analysis.
book and then you wrote a 4-page
No,
analysis
I
of
read the
how good
first
the first
chapter,
line.
and then I read a summary of the book, and then
Wow,
I wrote an analysis of the first sentence,
I
four
like it.
page analysis of the first sentence.
I like it.
And it was kind of like take that, Chat GPT. So
I'll give
yeah.
you something even less accurate
Yeah, I'll
about the
give you
book.
but yeah, it's it's one of those things you try to. So I will say obviously I'm very experienced working in Unreal. So don't
Really?
feel bad if you're not as fast. I have worked at the company for over 9 years, and so it's like if you did something, and so I used to tell my students, if you like, they'd be like, "Oh, that's an amazing, violin player or something." I'm like, if you'd practice violin for 8 years
Yeah.
every day, you'd probably be pretty good too. Like,
Mm.
so it's just,
No, but the bar
it's
keeps
just.
getting higher too, right? Like
You mean
everything
like
now.
other
What you
people have practiced 8 more years? Is that what you're
No, I mean
saying?
just yourself. Like for like when I jump onto a project and I
Yeah.
start doing all this cool stuff, and people are like, "Wow, look at this cool stuff," and I'm like, "You think this is cool? You should see the things I have in mind." And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I've just taken the whole dopamine hit away from myself because I'm too busy
Yes.
looking at like, well, yeah, it's cool, but if I did
Yeah.
this other thing, it'd be way cooler. And it's like, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's something that is just as part of being an artist. Is that part of being a successful artist or an effective artist is this ability to self-criticize. Like you have to be able to go, oh, this is where I need to improve. So your
Mm.
taste always has to be pushing above your skill level, and that means you'll never be satisfied.
Woo! We did it.
That's why, by the way, that's why you should tell the people that if you like an artist, you should just tell them that
Yeah.
you like their work, because that's the only joy that we get is when other people like it. We're never going to be satisfied with ourselves. So,
I feel like I finish a thing that I've worked like all day or even just several months on and get to the end, it finally works. And the whole time, those whole several months, I've just been praying for like, why doesn't it work? I just want it to work. Man, if it worked, it'd be so good. And the second it works, I'm like, cool. All right. So the next, and it's like,
yeah, there's no
that's like,
chance to enjoy it.
I'm all for enjoying the journey, but when the journey is nothing compiles and there's linker errors everywhere, and you don't understand, you don't get to enjoy the sound of it slowly improving. It's definitely something we've all got to work on
Yeah.
actually appreciating.
I will say there have been times when it's been so long that I've forgotten how I've made a thing that I then look back on and go, actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. And that's much better than the flip side when you look back on how you made a thing. And you're like, what the fuck was I doing here?
Yeah.
Why did I do it like this?
Ooh, we got
Thank
coffee
you,
incoming.
darling. Thank you.
Yay. Wait, is that cream? No.
It's just regular. I'm gonna try it. Look, I'm down. I'm gonna try it. We're gonna
One of
see how
these
it goes.
days.
One of these days. Someone in Burbank's going to show me how to make a real Americano. Wait, Americano is the one without cream, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Damn it.
Americano is just an espresso with more water, as I understand it. I'm not a coffee person,
Okay.
but an Americano, as I understand it, is just like a American-sized espresso.
Right.
It's not
Because we
more
call that a
espresso; they just add
long.
more water to it.
Yeah, we call that a long black, but I don't know if long black is. Just jump in the chat. Let us know
Yeah,
if
what
that's
do
an
you call your
Americano.
coffee?
I call mine Greg.
um,
Anyway, I see an X.
yeah. So this is first of all, just to make sure that that everyone at home is aware, I didn't make the game. This is one of the template projects that came out in 5.6, and it's called the Twin Stick shooter. And the if you go into the template wizard when you're starting a new project, and you uh, go to the top down template, there's a variant drop down window that will allow you to select. I think it's the twin stick, and then there's a strategy game variant, and then I think there's one other, or
Yeah, there's
there
like
may
an
be one other. I think
ARPG, I think, like a action run
that's a
around jump
that's a
dash
sample
thing.
game. That's a sample game.
Okay, different
Yeah,
thing.
that's a separate thing. This is when you like start a new UE5 project. You can say, "Oh, I want to make a game," and then you go in the game, and there's a bunch of template projects that
And
start
then it
out
just
with.
says, "Really?" And you're like, "Yeah,
This is
no, seriously, I do. I really do." And they're like,
yeah. Yes, we talked about how many games were published every year these days. Anyway, so the game is a twin stick shooter where your pawn fires wherever your mouse is. So you have like independent control. The mouse is the fire direction, and the WASD is your sort of move. If you're keyboard and mouse like I am, I could probably plug in a Xbox controller and then it'd actually be the twin sticks.
"Right."
But there are NPCs, the enemies that spawn from each of the corners, and the original implementation has them on a spawn delay, and I hacked it so that they spawn every bar.
That's cool.
And so and then they just walk towards you mindlessly. And I originally was going to try to see if I could figure out how to make them move like those that like Zelda music game. I forget
Oh,
what it's
yep,
called.
yep. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
Necronomicon? No,
yeah. I was going to try to
Crypt of
see
the
if I
Necrodancer.
Crypt of the
That's
yeah.
it.
So I was going to try to see if I could get. I know that there's an original game that's, and then they made the Zelda game based off of it. But I was going to see if I could try to control the movement that way, but it was a little bit too. It was a little bit more. It was like over my head right now, like how the AI controller worked and all that sort of stuff. Now, because I think it's just selecting a vector and then just a move velocity, and so or it actually had like physics. So there's like a move force and drag and all this sort of stuff. And so I was like, I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, fair.
But because if I want to do that, I'd just override all of the move mechanics and have to rebuild it. So I feel like I had time for that. So what I ended up
You didn't
doing
have
is
time in one night
I didn't
to
have time in
override
one
all
night to
the
like
AI.
learn how that worked and then and then make a new one. And
Yep.
so
Yeah.
instead, what I did is I had the NPCs bounce on the beat.
It's good.
uh, and then I have the main cue music, the main music cue, which we'll look at in a second. That's what we'll look at first, actually, because it does a lot of heavy lifting there. But it's hosted on the player pawn, and so all the player controls can feed into it. And so there's a lot of interactivity that I kind of get really easily because I'm interfacing directly with the meta sound. And then the NPCs and some of the other objects, the spawners and stuff, those end up receiving clock a clock distribution, which we'll talk about how that works too. And I think I have some thoughts on probably what ways and maybe we can try to improve that interface and how that works, because I think that because I wanted instantly, I wanted more from it than I got. And this is what I'm talking about is it's called the music environment system or subsystem. It's a new plugin. It was sort of slid in into
I'm
the
going to say, because I'm
it
working
was
on a game that has, like, as a personal project that has some NPCs that I want to do this same sort of behavior with, and I've been building my own version and was not aware that there was a thing.
yeah, it was stood up. It was stood up by Buzz Burrows like right before he retired, and he like checked it in like the week before he left the company. He was just like, "Boop."
That's so good.
And
What's it called? This is
it's called
great.
the music environment system or subsystem. I forget.
And when it came in 5.6 or 5.7?
Yeah, it came in 5.6, but I think that it was useless at 5.6. It didn't do anything, and so I think it was been added 2 cents for 5.7.
Wow. There you go.
But not a lot. It's very basic, and we'll look at what it does. I mean, it does an important thing for who's using it, but I feel like I want more from it, and we could talk about that too. But yeah. So let me crack open the main meta sound.
Yeah, this is crazy that this plugin has been sitting here. I feel like every now and then I need to just set a calendar event to just search new audio plugins and stuff, because there's just so much stuff in this engine.
Yeah. It's all the way over here. Okay. All right.
May need to go full screen on it.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Might be a little bit too small.
So this is the meta sound and a classic 8-channel mixer, as you do. And you can see this sort of sprawling running out of room kind of thing means that this was not planned at all. It was very like sort of ad hoc. I need this, I need this, I need this. So let me just play it so you can kind of hear how it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that audible?
Yep.
Cool. So I've got a like main drum beat here that's clock driven. So I've got this MIDI clock here, 100 BPM based off these samples, 4-bar loop, and I'm spinning out a MIDI clock variable, and I'm also got this MIDI clock output, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then what I have is I have a fire event that pulses every 8th note. And so what's happening is this subdivision trigger is ensuring quantization for the input. So this is an input trigger, and so the gameplay will feed that event when I press the fire button. We'll look at that, how that looks. I'll feed the event into the meta sound, and then what that'll do is it'll open this trigger once and allow a single pulse to pass through.
Gotcha.
And then that pulse will be quantized. So the downside of this is
really good. That's really cool.
So it quantizes the event, but the downside is it creates latency. So you have to sort of figure out a good grid resolution that feels still okay. And then what it does is it opens up this envelope, and it I have this. This is not efficient, by the way. It's not optimized, but I have this saxophone solo, but it's the sort of jazz solo, but it's oh, sorry, this is actually just what is this? This is actually, oh, sorry, this is drums. So I've got drums, but then I also have the fire event over here, similarly, but it's randomly selecting a saxophone solo from this list, and apparently, oh, some drums.
Hey, sometimes a saxophone can be drums if you use it really irresponsibly.
Henry Mancini did say the saxophone was one of the most versatile instruments, though.
Oh, I thought I was going to say the saxophones were the most versatile drums, and I'm like, what happened to the saxophone, Henry?
So I sort of cheat a little bit because the beginning of all these saxophone. Actually, hold on a second. I'm just going to get rid of these because these are not supposed to be here. Sorry.
My drums.
Yep.
God, I've built so much of this stuff, and it's great and sad to see it's already done.
So what I'm doing here is every 16 counts. So 2 bars at 8th note, right? 8th note rate. Every 16 counts, I'm resetting. You'll see a reset pulse right there. And what that is I have this random get, and this random get will cycle through this random stream, and every time it resets, it'll reset the stream. And so
the idea here is like every 8th note, there's a tick going, and if you happen to click or do a thing called the fire command, it will play the sax solo that you've selected for that 2-bar loop, and then that'll keep changing. So if you click at the next bar or whatever, the next 2 bars, it'll play a different one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's a way that I can rearrange this so that it's more like it's surfacing the melody, sort of a melody, implied melody. Yeah, it's basically there's this random seed is going to give me a specific stream that is deterministic. It's random, but it's deterministic. And so every time I call upon this, it's going to give me in the same order, same random order. And then what happens is there's an event where I can reset the seed, and I get a new sequence. So when I hit fire, you'll hear a drum hit, and you'll hear a saxophone.
Yeah, that is so cool. And the cool thing there is, like, when you, like, I can, obviously there's the latency, and like what you mentioned there of, you can't have a bar of latency because it'll be, you won't feel that impact. But depending on the type of game and the shooting speed and things like that, you could probably change that to feel really cool.
Yeah, and it all depends. Like in both these cases, in the drum case here, I'm just opening this gate. Basically, I've got this envelope. I open up the envelope, but this is playing in the background. And so what it's just doing is just sort of allowing the drum volume to come through, and that may or may not land on a hit. And so the hit may happen anytime during the opening of that. And I open it for, half a second. So pretty significant amount of time. But it is a sort of envelope here. So
but it's like, it feels like you're catching the beat as opposed to
exactly.
Playing a specific hit on it.
Yeah. And then I have a fill. And this is when I do a bomb, one of the bombs. It quantizes to the beat. So you see, I have a similar situation here where trigger once is coming on the beat, a trigger once, and then I open up the trigger once for a single pulse. And then what it's going to do is it's going to actually activate an envelope to sort of bring down the main beat and the main melody. And it's going to play a fill, like a scratch fill, and some random fill elements. And I think also, I added like a synth sound and stuff like that. So, if you spent longer than an evening, you could come up with some better designs here.
Maybe it'd be worse.
And then the last one is kind of silly. It's when the player gets knocked back. I just play a single tom sample on the grid, on the 8th grid. Okay, so that's how the main system. So there's quite a few events. We've got 3 different events that come in. They're quantized by the meta sound, and then they play and interact. Like the fill actually does like a mix effect effectively. The knock is just sort of silly, but because it was because the event was fed into the pawn, the player pawn, I could actually feed that event into here and then quantize it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So now let's take a look at the.
I'm gonna just hit play and
Yeah, do
run
you want
around
to
shooting some
just see
stuff.
what that?
Just remotely. That's
So
great.
so the seed is reset whenever I use a bomb.
Oh, right. And so because it's going to play every... Oh, okay. I get it. So because it changes every 2 bars, until you throw a bomb, it's going to play that same solo sequences of the 2 bars. Gotcha. That's a fun way to do it.
So what I could do here is there we go. What I could do to improve this saxophone experience is I could also seek into the wave file. So let me show you this. So what I could do is let me just make some room here to make some more mess. I could get the info, and then I could do we'll do to float. So I'm getting the duration of the selected wave file.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'll do is I'll divide it into um, 1/8 notes. So we can get the time. I know my thing is 100 BPM. That could also be something that is parameterized, so you could use different sets of data. But we want 1/8 notes. And so we're going to take this time. Actually, do we have time division? By float. Yeah, okay. We want to do divide. And so this will give us how many 1/8 notes is in our wave file.
Yeah.
And then what we could do is we can floor to integer. Sorry. This will round down, I believe. But for safety's sake, I will just take away 1, just in case. That will prevent us from selecting the last one.
Gotcha.
At the very least. Or the last fraction or whatever. And then what I want to do is I want a random int from 0 to that.
So it's giving you a random slice in 1/8 notes in the
This
time.
is the same as a random array element selection, right? Because I'm just sort of treating this like the slices as an array. And so then I take this duration I take this time float. Actually, let's do this. To float. And then we will multiply
gotcha.
the time. Boop. Like that. And then we'll make that the seek time in. So then we'll seek into that. And maybe we'll do this just to sort of make me a little bit cleaner looking. So now, and we can just test it here. Now we'll get some intermediary samples coming in there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, for the saxophone specifically, it really works well here too.
Yeah, the performance is very staccato, and so it helps the sort of design being that sort of like quick sample chunk in there. And you sort of forgive the like spliced nature of, like, we could go really deep and actually like
Sure.
chop up the samples and all this sort of stuff. But what's nice about this approach is you get a good chunk of performance, and the performance is rhythmically contextual because it's matched to the grid, the eighth note grid there. So let's see how that changes up the variety.
Kind of cool actually, because you end up getting more breaks as it happens to sample a bit that didn't have the start of a note.
Yeah. A little more rhythmic interest.
That's great.
Oh, and then you can hear the donk. Hey, you don't mind that it's I don't mind that it's latent personally because the rhythmic feels like it fits.
I feel like there's the caveat here is that you're trying to make an experience that feels synced, and the leeway there of having a hit, especially because of the drag of the horn, like that slow-mo kind of drag, you sort of get away with it even more.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's cool.
Yeah. I will try to make sure that I bring this to Game SoundCon so that people want to play around with it.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, so then I think these impacts are just these are called on the so this MPC impact is called, I think, rhythmically. We'll have to check, but this is just a bunch of synth, just me messing around with synth stuff, I think. And do I have a wave player at all in here? Yeah, let's see.
Oh, yeah, there's one.
Yeah, so I was kind of going for it. There's like an explosion, and then the things disappear or something. And I was playing around with like how much to bit crush this and sort of boost this noise sound. That's something that I think could be tweaked better.
Sure.
And then I had the bomb pickup. I didn't actually synchronize the bomb pickup, but it just had to sound different.
Yeah.
So if we go into the blueprints, let's go and look at the character. So you can see over on the left side, I have a music audio component, and then I also have a music clock component. And on the begin play, I guess I didn't end up using that. I create a music beta sound driven music clock. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a new I think this actually creates a new music clock with the meta sound registered with it. The meta sound I pass in, the audio component I pass in registered with it. And then the MIDI space clock name is the meta sound output of the MIDI clock that it's going to receive. So it's basically, if we look back at my meta sound, up here at the clock section, you can see I'm outputting. I have an output called MIDI space clock, and this is the name of the clock. So what's happening is this music clock is now being registered with this audio component, and it's going to be it's going to be binding a delegate for a music clock output named this music clock. And the only thing that I had to do here was make sure it was a meta sound driven music clock, because the other option is a wall clock driven music clock. And that wall clock is like the game clock, basically.
Interesting. Okay.
So
and just to sort of quickly review the tech stack here for the plugins that are involved in this. Is this just the
Yeah, that's a great
harmonics
question.
plugin and the, you know?
Yeah, so where's my plugin window? Where'd it go? Maximize. Who's in this window here? Okay. So yeah, so you want to at least have the where does it? Where did I just pass by it?
Harmonics, I think it
So
is, or
here's the
music
music
environment.
environment plugin. So you need to activate that, and you'll need to activate the harmonics plugin. And the
Because
meta
one of
sounding is
the
on by default. So, but that should be activated too, obviously.
there's
What do you got?
a really interesting thing here where it feels like you know, Quartz is your blueprint side version of this, and
Yeah.
then you have Metasound driven music clock, which is from the harmonics side, or is that from the music environment?
So Quartz. So this is I think an important. This is an important reminder. Quartz's role is sample accurate scheduler
Hmm.
for onset for play onset. The that it does have a callback, but that's not. It wasn't enough for what Harmonix wanted to do.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't exactly what they were looking for because they need their music system to be driven by meta sounds.
Mm.
So the clock has to live in the meta sound. That's the clock source. And so then their question was, how do we get that access to that? And Quartz was not the answer for them.
Yeah.
And this was created for patchwork. So patchwork is like if you play UEFN, there's a system called Patchwork, which is like 3D modular synthesizers, um, and uh, and that's actually using the Metasound Builder to construct your synth network. So when you're in UEFN and you're making the connections with like the cable components to the different synthesizers, every time you do that, it's updating the Metasound graph. There's a dynamic, procedurally created Metasound graph behind the scenes that is being constructed as you do this. So it's actually just a fancy way of creating Metasounds, which is really fun.
Mm.
And it's just what each network is one Metasound. And
Right.
so it's self-contained, it has its own clock. But what they wanted was a way to get that clock to gameplay. And so
Gotcha.
this is what the music component does: is it receives that MIDI clock data and outputs it to gameplay. So in so doing this, calling this, this registers, basically it creates a brand new clock that is uh, registered with this audio component and looks for this specific um, MIDI clock output by name. So technically, you could have multiple MIDI clocks outputting.
Yeah.
And so I just, because it creates a new clock reference, I cache it. And then what I do is I cast it to this music environment clock source. Now, this is the new thing. This is an interface. So a music clock component can be a clock source, but so can other things like maybe sequencer.
Mm.
And so the concept behind the music environment is a way to manage. Well, at a high level, it's sort of managing the music environment across your whole project. But the feature that exists now is a music clock source manager. And the music clock source manager allows you to um, manage the priority of music clock sources. And so through this interface, you could get a specific clock, or you could get the global clock authority, and then the source manager can manage the most global authoritative clock. So if there are multiple clock sources all competing for authority over all the music systems that are sort of dependent upon the clock, like it could be anything, like an emote, dances, and stuff like that could be maybe tempo dependent upon this clock source, right? And so that's kind of how you can think of it. And then and like a music, a game that's very complex may have a lot of competing music elements that need some sort of priority system,
Yep.
and thus a clock priority as well. If things are supposed to, if you've got like little doodads like bopping to the beat, and someone plays a stinger or an emote or something like that, and it's different from the underscore, then it's like you got to change the doodads now have to dance to a different music, right? So
Gotcha.
yeah, so it's a way to sort of have a central authority for this music clock, and potentially other music environment things, right? Other systems, other managers for managing music across the ecosystem. So I cast this music clock to this music environment clock source, and this yellow means that it's basically an interface.
Hmm.
And then what I do is I from the music environment subsystem, I get the clock source manager. I get a reference to it, and then I add my clock to it using a
Gotcha.
gameplay tag as an identification for it. And I made a quick tag that's just music.clock.main. But this is how you would potentially, if you wanted to select specific clocks and distribute them and have some other thing, procedurally receive a clock, it could be by tag, right?
This is literally exactly what I made. This is so good. It's exactly how I did all of this. That's so good. Oh, that's awesome.
So I set that up on begin play. I sort of basically I'm just saying, okay, here's my music, here's my music clock, and then here I register my clock with you with this tag, and then we have some of the where did I here? So on the tick, did I end up doing anything on that? No, I didn't do anything in the tick. So basically, else I did here is I just added my parameters wherever relevant. So this is like, when the player fires a bomb, then I add a fill execute to my thing, and then I change the seed. And then when they fire a projectile, I execute my fire trigger, right?
I mean, it's so nice because it's really, really simple on the actual blueprint side.
Yes. Yeah. This part is because the meta sound itself is here's the knockback, right? It's like here's the timeline for like pushing the player or whatever pawn or whatever. And
Yep.
then here's the actual execution, and I just insert a like sort of sneak in a little sequence.
Yeah, that's where we go.
Yeah, so this part is easy because it's quantized inside the meta sound. In order to quantize other events, it gets a little bit. This is where I would like to expand the interface of the clock, because if we get into like the spawner, sorry, this wasn't obvious. I could have also done like a sound whenever there was a spawn, but
Yeah.
they just spawn on the beat, and so I have to do this kind of weird thing. So first, on begin play, I receive my clock. Right, this is basically the same thing, but in reverse. I get the clock source manager, from the subsystem, and then I find a clock via a tag, and which I've already in, and I sort of cache the interface for that clock. And then when the interface is valid, I get the current bar and beat. This is the only function available right now, is to pull the bar and beat off of it,
Gotcha.
which I don't like. I prefer delegates. I prefer
Yeah,
events.
sure.
And then if it's not valid, I just make it try again, basically, to try to find the clock again. And so what I end up having to do here is I take because I know that I want the beat, I want to spawn once every bar. I take the modulus of the beat in bar, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And when the modulus equals 0, I trigger a do once that starts open. But first, actually, I check to see if the if the beat is on 3, index
Could
3.
you just check if the bar was the same as the last time you measured the bar and then fire?
No, because I only want it to be at the top of the bar.
Right. So you'd have to check bar is
So
different and
presumably
just zero beat.
this tick could trigger multiple times per beat.
Gotcha. Okay. Right, because we don't know how fast it's ticking and because it's not a
Right.
delegate. Okay, I get you. Yeah, so I could see an intermediary subsystem that just does delegates
That would be
per bar or
nice. Yeah.
something. Sure.
Yeah, or like if the source man, if the interface, if I could like subscribe to delegates from the interface through the
Yep.
interface, that would be the
Yep.
ideal here. And so that's my request. That's but
Come on,
mainly
Buzz, get
yeah.
out of retirement.
But yeah, so here you know, when it's at the top of the when it's at the end of the bar, I reset the do once, and then the next time it's 0, it will trigger. So this can be latent, but it'll be near the beginning of the bar. And then it's just, and then I just, this is just interceding the like traditional spawn timer that they had. They had like set up a regular gameplay timer for it. And so then it does its spawn thing. So that is sort of the hackery that I have to do to quantize events. And so you can see something similar here on the pawn, where you know where's my begin play here? Oh yeah. Where's my begin play? Well, here's the setup. Let me just see who references this. Okay. Find references by name. There we go. Oh, here we go. So here's the begin play. I set up my clock. And then that's just exactly the kind of thing we've just been doing before. We just find the clock by a music tag. This is where you want to make sure that you find it. So it's good to evaluate the interface. So you can see here when I try to evaluate the interface, if it's false, if the interface is not valid, then I have to
Yep.
set up the clock again. And it's a loading thing. Sometimes because you can't, determine the load order of all the U objects. And so sometimes some of the NPC actors might load before the music clock's set up. So you just have to keep checking until it's done. And it's usually just the first couple times, but that's something to be aware
That's
of.
definitely a good point because a lot of the time we will breakpoint it, run it, and then if it doesn't work, change the system. Whereas sometimes it's just never actually going to run in that order, and like, don't
Yeah.
throw away your whole approach just because it works or doesn't work right
Yeah.
the first time. You need to build the fallbacks in to make sure that, like, okay, if it spawns in or world partition streams it out or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
you're going to still be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something to be, this is a really common thing, I think, in Unreal is like you don't have control over load order. Load order is asynchronous as an efficiency. And so um, you don't know when everything's going to enter the scene. And what's difficult is sometimes you could be on your machine and it's very similar order every time. And then you try it somewhere else and you're like, I don't know why it doesn't work. It works at home.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, so then on my um, tick, uh, I do the check and then I get the bar and beat, and then I'm doing something similar here, except that I'm moduloing it by a float modulus here. And so what I'm looking for is getting a cycle that's always 0 to 1, 0 to 1. So um because this gives you beat fractions. When it's in float, when I was converting it to integer, it was flooring it to
Right.
the closest integer or the bottom integer, rounding down effectively. So what I do is I do this and then I offset it by half, and then I invert it. So this could go 0 to 1. Now it could go from 0.5 to 1.5, and then I 1 minus this, and that I set as the uh, the z-axis scale for the actor, and then and so what happens is every tick this updates the scale of the actor, and that creates a little bounce that's 1 beat long. And the inversion here, this plus half, and the minus plus half means that it's going to effectively go from um, 1.5 to 0.5 over and over again.
Right. So it's going to look like it's kind of bobbing up and down.
Yeah, but the inversion makes it go in the opposite direction.
Gotcha.
So I added that inversion because it didn't seem like they were bouncing on the beat. It seemed like they were bouncing at the end of it. Like,
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, because if you do it the other way, they're
like shrinking
down.
on the beat,
Yeah,
or something like that. Yeah,
which could be cool for
Yeah.
some things, but this one particularly, yeah.
And then when I hit them, I do a try hit. What am I doing here? Let's see. This is thing. Oh, right. And so try hit is opens it up. And similarly it's just called, yeah. So what happens is, this is you know what I did? I guess I didn't quantize this. So I could have added a kind of like I did before on the spawner, as I could have added an evaluation to make sure that we were just getting pulses on the bottom of the beat or something like that. Oh no, I am doing that. Sorry. So yeah, here it is. Beat in the bar. Boop. It's every half, every eighth note basically. So I'm moduloing by half. So that means as it fractionally counts up from 0 to 4, it's going to
You get
cycle
one every 8.
every half, and then what's going to happen is when it's nearly equal to 0, I will open this up. It'll allow it do once through. So that quantizes the impact sound to happen roughly around an eighth note.
Yeah, I could definitely see how having some delegates makes you just have to do a lot less here, because you could just be like, give me that version.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Quartz, is you can subscribe to that delegate, tune your callback timing, and then see if it feels good, you know.
Yeah, so that's the thing I've been building on the side is this version. Obviously, I guess I'm going to rebuild another version with this music environment system, but
Yeah.
I wonder if do you have any clear delineation of say when you would use Quartz versus when you would use this? I know that you sort of explained it a little bit, but maybe it's something worth going into more detail, just because when people look at Audio Sync and Unreal, they're like, it's Quartz.
Yeah.
Or you do it all in Metasounds and do that kind of thing. Like obviously there's some crossplay, but where?
Yeah. So Quartz is Quartz. So we can talk about Quartz a little bit. So the original concept for Quartz was the time synth. So the time synth was originally created because we were we were prototyping some interactive music in Fortnite, and Fortnite at the time was partially on the new audio engine, partially on the old legacy audio engine. And synth components, which we announced back in 2017 when we announced the new audio engine, synth components were actually backwards compatible because they were derived from a procedural sound wave, which was also implemented in the legacy audio engine.
Gotcha.
And so building a music system inside of a synth component allowed us to straddle both of those rendering situations, I guess you could say. And so the time synth was what it was called because it allowed you to schedule sound to play at a specific musical timing.
Okay.
And but the challenge that we ran into with the time synth was it was effectively like a little micro audio engine. It had its own mixer, it had its own volume management system, it had all this sort of stuff that was very specific. And then what we got was like feature requests that already existed in the general purpose audio engine.
Right.
And so once we had completed the crossover, and Fortnite was then using the new audio mixer. This was in December of 2019. That was the first time we were allowed to turn the new audio engine on by default for new projects.
Right.
And that was 424 UE 424. So from 2000 from 4 well, I should say from 415 was actually the first time we announced the audio engine. There was a soft announce. We talked about Robo Recall. This is February of 2017. As is 415 had just come out, had just come out.
Your memory of
And
these patch numbers is
yeah,
really
I know it's
impressive
terrible, right?
because it's I could see the trauma, but
Yeah,
the
exactly.
yeah that's no, I mean it is really good to know like that's a deep knowledge of the history of Unreal and like the
Yeah,
decisions that come up to it. It really actually informs like, well, why does this do that, and why does it?
yeah,
Oh, actually, it's all built by a team trying to use this on real projects as opposed
yes,
to theory crafting the idea of how
yeah.
an audio engine works, which is, you know, I view that as the strength of the Unreal Audio Engine in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's part of the like Epic philosophy. All the new features have to be what they call battle tested.
Yeah.
Which is a nicer way of saying dog fooding. Like that's,
Yep.
the other way of saying it. But it's like we can recommend meta sounds because it's been listened to millions and millions of times. Like you have
Yeah.
heard millions and millions of meta sounds.
And it's a lot more like the test base that Epic has is a lot wider than people
It's the
think it is.
Western Hemisphere. Yeah.
It's used on every, you know, every type of game from every genre and every country of
Yeah.
every type of size. So
Yeah.
it's not the same as like one engineer somewhere did a test and was like, I think meta sounds isn't that performant, and you're
Yeah.
like, it's fine, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you have to appreciate is, and this is the case all over the Unreal Engine, and you'll see YouTube videos on this all over the place, which is like e- Unreal can be really powerful. It can do really cool stuff. But if you want it to run on 7 platforms and half of those are mobile, then you have to optimize it and you have
Yeah,
to be very traditional about how you build out those features. And a lot of times, like when I started working on Lego Fortnite as an example, we knew that Switch is going to be one of those platforms we had to make sure always worked. And so from the outset, there was this sort of that in mind in terms of
yeah,
architecture and design and all that sort of stuff moving forward. So I think that's part of it. And I think a lot of folks they get really excited, understandably, about really flashy features. But they add all of them, all like they pack them all in, um, it's like, not to get all basic on people, but like, one of those classic criticisms of the Bake Off is like, where's your hero flavor? Because it's like you need a focal point in your presentation, and the
Yeah.
same goes for the where you decide to spend your platform resources. It is like, for example, one of the games that I worked on a long time ago was a mobile game, was a physics puzzle game, and it used physics simulation. It was like doing physics sim on like an
Okay.
iOS. This was like 15 years ago or something. And so like I knew that from an audio perspective, I had to get out of the way
Mm.
of that CPU resource, right? So we did things like we implemented, because the iOS had hardware accelerated MP3. We implemented all the music in MP3. We did seamless looping using the classic looping utility that you
Yep.
always search for every time you're like, how do I do looping MP3s?
Yep.
and and
It can be done, by the
it
way.
can be done. Yeah.
People think that there's going to be a blip, and that's
Yep.
not actually that's not a requirement for
No, in
using
fact,
MP3s.
I authored an intro into a loop file, and
Hmm.
my programmer who wrote the feature out in OpenAL implemented that the the buffer loading so that it would loop effectively. But the authoring on my side had to be done correctly as well. Anyway,
Totally.
so we used the hardware accelerator, hardware accelerated MP3, so it wasn't using the CPU, wasn't relying on the CPU all that much. And then I implemented all of my sound effects uncompressed wave, but I was extremely uh uh aggressive in my downsampling. So I would just like, there were like 4K sounds and 8K sounds and 12K sounds. So they were all very tightly edited and very, very small. And
Gotcha.
this was because at the time you couldn't effectively sell an app more than 30 gigs or 30 megs, because at the time it was just 3G, and 30 megabytes was the download limit for any app
Yeah.
over 3G. And if you were selling a game, especially at that time, if you were selling a game on like the App Store, any of the app stores, then you would not sell the game if people couldn't download it immediately. Like if
I mean,
they
it's
had to
still a
wait
thing
before
today. Like
exactly.
with the reason that you download a game and then the first thing that happens is when you launch it, it downloads the game
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
because they don't want you to get that notification that says, "Oh, you're going to have to wait for Wi-Fi to download
yeah,
this because it's too big."
yeah. Anyway, that was what I don't remember. What were we
I mean,
talking about? Oh,
so
getting
we
out
were
the
talking about
resource. Thinking about resource.
yeah,
Yeah,
where you spend those resources is a still a thing. I know that people believe that
yeah,
like, oh, we can do everything, we can do ray tracing, we can do everything, blah blah blah. But it is, you can, if that's where you want to spend your bucks. And at the end of the day, you still have a budget to spend. It doesn't really matter, and putting
yeah,
more features in that budget just means the dollars have to go further. And something I feel like I bump into on every project ever is that, and like I'm a progenitor of new systems and ideas. I want to make really cool sounding things, and occasionally I make something really cool that I just go, this is so cool, and it means that we probably can't do this whole other thing. Like, you do
yeah,
have to have that conversation. I mean, one of the useful things about the clocks and having this variability of like, where do I do things, blueprints, do I do like, there is a benefit here of the Metasound stuff runs audio thread, and you can do clock stuff in a different place, and there's a way to pay for the same costs effectively, but from a different bank account, which sometimes you're
yeah,
overdraft in one bank account, you
yeah,
need to pay from another bank account. Sometimes you're overdraft on both bank accounts, but you
yeah.
promise that you will pay for it. And that's where latency comes from. So there is a benefit to knowing a few different implementation strategies. And I feel like this is one of them, where if we know that we can pay from a different place, the downside, I suppose, is that when you have to do the math to do the ticking checks to work out like, oh, if it should play now, which is where the delegates really helps you,
Yeah,
because then you don't have that that additional lay-by of the purchase.
Yeah, exactly. I think Tick is a great example of that. Like Tick is one of those death by 1,000 executions. And anytime you can push event rather than pull events, I feel you're going to be in a better situation, because then you'll only run the checks and the calculus when it matters, and not when it doesn't.
And it always starts, I feel like in prototype mode, it always starts on tick, because you just feel like I need to know when the information changes, what happens. But there's so many things. Like one of the really good lessons I learned working on sports games and commentary systems, where thousands and thousands of things need to be checked before you say a line of dialogue. You
Right.
need to say, oh, well, like if they hit the ball and it goes pretty far, and you want to work out, well, is it going to be caught? Is it like talking about cricket or baseball or something? Like, is it going to be caught? Is it a decent hit? Is it going out of bounds? You don't want to say it's a great hit if it's a foul ball.
Right.
So you need to check a lot of different things, and that makes the commentary contextual. And one of the things I wasn't used to was that the work was kind of done in other places. Like the AI needed to know that they were going to catch the ball. So I didn't need to recalculate everything.
Yeah.
I needed to listen for when if the AI believed it was going to catch it, it could fire off an event that I would say, he thinks he's going to get, is he going to get this one? Or is it's close or something like that? And it meant just not redoing work. I feel like if you're an audio member of a team, or if maybe you're the only audio member of the team, maybe you're just a programmer that's been tasked with working with audio, it really behooves you to talk to other people on the team to work out, like, is someone already doing this work? Because the cardinal sin really feels like when two people do the same bit of work in different ways and get different results that they both think is appropriate. And that can be a real difficult bug to find, because you just go delving into someone else's code and not understanding, why is theirs right or is mine right? And wait, why are we doing this in two places? Is there a manager this should be feeding up to? And those hidden bugs really do come from the earlier stuff we mentioned of, like, when is it loaded? Is it loaded at different times, or is it ticking along? And something that's ticking always feels safe. It always feels like, yeah, but I'll just check it. And I know it's a small check. And a title I'm working on at the moment has sort of thousands and thousands and thousands of sounds. So when I decide to put a single tick in, I'm actually putting several thousand ticks in.
Yeah.
And there's no way around that other than really thinking, what's the likelihood of this object being several instances of it or whatever. Right. Whereas, the first idea you showed, where there's a music system that is playing a sound, okay, well, maybe it's not optimized, but there is only one. So that's a different, going to be a different equation altogether.
Yeah. 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 And anytime I feel like, there's like building that architecture to manage that, to so that maybe only one thing is ticking, and then it's broadcasting at the relevant time when things need to change. Similarly, I feel like we've got to do better in cross-discipline or cross-domain event handling.
Always, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and data handling. Like, I feel like there should be a certain amount of surfacing these things to a common space, so that, because it's frustrating, and I find a lot of technical sound design work is this just making the data connection, like just doing the
it's
plumbing,
bridge building,
right?
100% bridge building.
And it's like I feel like I remember working on a lot of on these short, fast special projects, and having the like, do we have a state manager? Has anyone created a state manager yet? Like, or is anyone else measuring state? I need to know the state of things, because I've got music, and music is stateful. And I'm usually the first one, to like surface that, because it's a top of my list. And there's so many other domains who are very simulation oriented. And so state is like inferred, or the result is not stateful.
It does feel
Or
like
false
the
data.
the usage of the domain makes people feel like that information isn't like appropriate for others. Like the biggest one I always think of is time of day.
Yeah.
Time of day is one that's always somewhere or in multiple places or measured from multiple places, because you have something like, oh well, at night the street lights turn on. So
Yep.
someone wrote a system that said, well, once it's past point 125, the street lights turn on, and you're like, it what? Oh. And then someone else writes a system that says like, well, we spawn these other things at night, so I'll make a weather state changed event or a time
Right.
of day changed event. And the first music system I built, or the first really big one, was all done. There's a music system. It had some ticking elements, but it was all these magic numbers of times of day, because the time of day wasn't a 0 to 1, and
Yeah.
it changed. And so if someone decided to make the day length longer, it meant that you had to go into some places and change some magic numbers. And over time I moved more and more towards an event or even just an enum list of the states, and found that, like, well, actually everyone needs this information. Or even
Yeah.
something like physics of a person gets hit, and yet in most games I work on, like, nobody can tell me that a person was hit by a bullet. Like, I have to
Right.
go and do that. I have to go and, I've got to bind to component hit, and then I've got to get the normal impulse and work out the length and the well, hang on, like, isn't it important that we all know that a blood spray's got to come out,
Yeah.
and this has got to happen, and that's got to happen, play a sound. And so I definitely agree with you. The state management plus just events, most of the time I feel like if you do talk to an engineer and say like, hey, could I have that? They're like, oh yeah, I could make that, that's pretty easy. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, talk to them. Don't just build it yourself and then say like, oh, it's okay because I've got the information I need. And then at the end of the day, you just find yourself redoing work
Yeah.
someone else has already done, which is just paying interest, really.
Yeah. That's comms, right? Like that's making sure that, people, that there's sync meetings, people know what people are doing. There's sort of this constant ease of communication. And I think that varies dramatically between studio cultures.
Yeah, it really does. If you're a studio that's working, in house, and you can walk up the corridor and talk to someone, or maybe you're just at lunch talking to someone about a cool idea, or even something like show and tell, where
Right.
you're showing what you've been working on. Like, I always found that at show and tell was when I found out about a feature that we needed to know. So that part of it is always really important. But that's why these, like, the music environment system, that is a really powerful tool for delegating the
Yeah.
timing of events, and probably will need to be listened to at a bunch of different places. And if you have to change your implementation slightly at each of those stages, that it's definitely like something bad waiting to happen when someone else decides that it needs to work differently, or
Right.
whatever it might need to be. God, it's cool though. I'm gonna play with that today.
Yeah. Do you we're pretty, I mean, we're basically at 2 hours. Do you what do you
I think I
wanna
think what I
do
think I
anything?
might do some work on it, and then
Some
we
tweaking.
can discuss it, because now I've got something that I could use, and just it's just something else interesting. Plus, it's just yeah, we can talk about a different time, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. All right. Cool. Take it.
No, that was awesome. Thanks for showing that. So that's a 5.6 feature, right?
It's 5.6, but I think it was added to, because when I looked at it 5.6, it didn't really do anything.
Okay.
I think they added. I'm not sure actually, because I haven't
Okay.
done an AB. I just remember when 5.6 came out, and I was like, "Is there anything here?" And I was like, looking at the code, I'm like, "No, it looks like there's nothing here."
Okay.
It looked like there was just the skeleton of, or the footprint before the foot or something like that. And so this time around, I was like, I think, that work? And I tried it out, and I was like, oh, I found this get beats, and I could get my clock and add a clock and stuff like that. So And again, I feel like it's not enough like what I would if this was, a project I was earnestly working on, then I would be like, okay, let's get in that interface and see if I can set up delegates for specific timings, grid timings, stuff like that. Because I think that is really would simplify the implementation on
Yeah,
the
totally. And I mean,
REST
it's tricky
audience gain
because
from it.
you actually kind of don't want to build off of the stuff without it, because otherwise you're just starting up tech debt for really no particular reason at
Yeah.
that stage.
I
But
mean, with games
yeah.
as a service, is tech debt even avoidable?
No, it's not. It's not. But I mean, it was a funny thing. A friend of mine said, "Well, I was working on this new feature," and he said, well, "Yeah, but like, it was in a Witcher 4 video just tech display showcase," and he's like, "Well, see, yeah, but it's there, so like, you don't need to build it." And I'm like, "I don't, but I don't know when they're going to build it." So it's one of those things where like, I could just wait forever and never make a game,
Yeah.
and then when I'm ready, it'll have everything. But that's sometimes you just build a thing knowing that there is a bigger, better thing coming. But hey, we're making games, not waiting to make games. So
I think there's also something to. There are some. I don't know. Feel like a part of the fun that I have is the challenge of solving the problem
absolutely.
and coming up with interesting ideas. And I don't always get to implement them, but I feel like it's like the fun part.
I mean, I implemented this whole quartz version of a thing that didn't need to happen, with all this timing restitution of where the beat was happening. And I don't know what I'll do with this thing now, but I mean, it's still useful. It's a different purpose altogether. So I didn't need to. I would love to do a proper harmonics walkthrough at some stage, because it feels like there's a lot more in that than I've found documentation and examples for. So it does feel like that plugin in particular is extremely powerful. But I guess that's for another time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. All right.
Well, thanks
Well,
for
yeah.
having me. Thanks for chatting
Yeah,
music.
absolutely. Thanks everyone in the chat who kept things going. Shake Noise and Nick Emerson had some cool Johannes cool comments. Stephen Lawless, as always. A lot of regulars, Angelite, Monohive.
Especially anyone that shared some books, or if you've got some other books that or references or online things, feel free to reach out, and we'll try and put them in the description or the video notes as well, because there was some great ones in the chat.
Yep. Yep. But only the great ones.
Only the great ones. No terrible ones.
All right. Thanks everyone. Hope y'all have a good week or something like that.